Hello, and welcome back. In the last episode, we covered how to make a basic form and how to put a label on there. And that label said "Hello World." In this one, we're actually going to modify that code, and we're going to show you the difference on how the server side works versus the client side, and we're going to add a couple of fun little things to it. So I've actually changed the label's ID to return text, and then I actually changed it to TTT, the text to TTT. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to add a couple of pieces. We're going to add a label, and we're going to add a text box, and then we're going to add a button. And then we're actually going to go down to the next line. We're going to put that label, and that should be on the second line down. So when I run this one, it should show me 2 lines with the label on the second line down saying teeth. And it actually doesn't, believe it or not. It puts the T's up top. Now, if you did any of the HTML tutorial on W3 schools, or you know anything about HTML, you know that HTML is just a tag reader. It literally reads tags from left to right, top to bottom. And in this case right here, we have input data, no space, text box, no space right here, text box, no space, button, no space. And then on the next line down, there's no break line, there's nothing, but there's one space, and there's a bunch of spaces, and there's a text, and there's another label. So as we see down here, what it looks like, even if I hit enter 400,000 times, that TTT is still going to stay there no matter what. Now, in order for me to actually get the T's to go to the next line, I have to put in either a paragraph or a break line. So when I hit BR and I go and I click on this right here to sync it, you'll see that now that goes down to the next line down. We're gonna remove this right here, and we're gonna sync it. It goes back up. So the BR means break line. We have to use the BR in order to do well, I use the BR to put stuff on the next line down. We'll use CSS to really cover, like, making the style sheets look good and making it look presentable. I also like to use tables to set the alignments and stuff. That's where people use div tags and style sheets to do that. But I'm going to use table. So in this case right here, what I put is I put the label with no space, and you can see there's no spaces here. So let me space it out a little bit. We'll put a space there, and we're going to put a space between the button here, and then we're going to sync the views. Now we'll see that there's actually, again, this is the reason why I don't like it, because you don't really see it here. But when I run it, you'll actually see the space right up in here. See, there's a space there, and there's a space there. So when I run it, it looks different than this. This doesn't always look like what you're going to see in the browser, just because the browser handles it differently than that. Okay, so in this case right here, let's add a BR so we can bring this down to the next line. And we now have our tag with our text on the bottom. So now what we're trying to accomplish here is we're going to take the input data, we're going to click on the button, we're going to change this to be whatever the input data is there. So the question that we're going to ask is, when we click on that button, how do we want to update the return text label? How do we want to do that? Do we want to go to the server and have the server update the label for us and send it back to us? Or do we want to use JavaScript on the client side and have the client update it for us? For the sake of simplicity right here, and this video, to keep it short, we're going to cover server-side stuff. The next video, we'll cover client-side. Well, a little down the way, we'll cover more client-side stuff. So in this case right here, we're going to cover the server-side, remembering that the button, because the button itself is running on the server, I'm going to get actually this. Because the button itself is running on the server, I'm going to bring it down here, which duly note, it makes no difference in the HTML. So when I update the view, it still looks the same. It's just bringing it into view so we can see it. The button is running on the server, and it's button 1. The ID is button 1. And the text is going to say submit. Fine, submit. Now, if I get rid of this run at server, and on the server side I try to call the button, it's not going to actually find the button because the server doesn't know what the button is. The run at server tells it to run the button, to point the button at the server and run it on the server side. So the server will know what button 1 is. By removing this run at, we actually remove the whole entire server aspect of it. So what we'll do is we're going to save this. We'll run it right now. I'm going to show you just a little bit quickly. All right. So when I click on the submit button, notice up here it refreshes. That means that it's making a trip back to the server and coming back to us, and letting the server determine how to handle that button click. We're going to remove this run at server, and we're going to actually come back here, and we'll see that the button's no longer there because it's not on the server. So we actually do have to put that back. So Control Z. No, you. Control Z. Thank you. Z. Thank you. So we'll leave that there. All right. So we're going to stop this right here. So we need that run at server because buttons do run at the server. Duly note that one way to override the on click is to actually use the on click, and we're going to use say SS. So we're actually going to override the on click, and we're going to create some quick Java. This is a little bit further. Function SS. This is a little bit more advanced, but what I'm trying to do is just override the clickability so it doesn't go back to the server. It actually gets handled on the client side. So, and we got an error. That's perfectly fine. It's because it's probably on client click. I think it is. Oh boy. Stop. You. Yeah. See, on client click. That's what it is. And now when I click it, the JavaScript should handle it instead of actually going back to the server. Either way, we'll talk more about client side stuff later on down the road. But for now, we're just going to keep it simple. Go server side. So when I have my views like this, again, if I double click on the button, just like in applications, it'll actually bring me to the code. So let's double click on here. We'll see that in a page, it gives us the page.load up top, which handles me.load, and then it'll write this function in here for button1.click. All right, so because we're working with the client side, the server side stuff, and we want to do just what we did in the application, and we're going to do it just like what we did in the application. So let's go back to the page here. Let's take a look at what our text box 1. So when they click the button, we want to take text box, the return text, and we want to set that text to equal whatever's in text box 1. If you have not watched the first couple of videos, go back and watch those few videos. They'll show you a couple of different ways of doing this, a couple of easier ways to do this. I'm going to do it the fast way, and skip over all the beginning basic stuff that I showed you in the application. In an application, we can do, in here we can do the same thing as an application. We can define variables, assign it to variables, and then update the label with the variables. Or we can just update the label directly and quickly like this way. And then I'll show you another way in JavaScript how to do it in JavaScript. So here, what we're going to do is we're just going to make this label.text equals textbox1.text. Same deal. Same deal as I showed you. And what we'll do is we're actually going to set a breakpoint here so that when we run it and we actually click it, we'll break it so that we can take a quick look at the code. Remember breakpoints, when you're running this on a web server and you're connected remotely, breakpoints are not, you cannot stop at a breakpoint. When you're running this on your computer and you're running in debug mode, you can stop at a breakpoint. So we already have text. We're going to hit submit. Now we're actually going to stop at a breakpoint. And, okay. So now when we hover over text, it tells us what the text is in text box 1. We have the text that says TTTT. So when we hit F5 to run it, it's going to go back, and it's actually going to send back to the client and say, okay, so button 1 click, now return text box equals text box 1. So after the button click, this is now equal that. Send it back to the client. All right, cool. Now, another thing about round trips to the server is that we have to be careful. This page.load, this page_load on the me.load runs every time we make a trip back and forth to the server, no matter what. I'm going to show you an example of what I mean. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a text box down in the bottom here. And this text box is going to show us exactly what I mean. So here we're going to go BR. Let's do a couple of BRs for breaks. A BR here. We'll put another text box 2 down here. Sure. And then actually go slash whatever. That's fine. Okay. So text box 2. Now, what we're going to do is each time the page loads, we're going to do this right here. Textbox2 dot text equals textbox2 dot text, which is current text, and 1 and a. So a space. Okay. So what it's going to do is each time this page loads, it's going to do that. It's going to run this piece. So let's go ahead and do it. Now we'll unfreeze this because we already know, so we don't want to do this. So we see just one basic A. All right. So let's do this. There. Now we got another one, and another, and another, and another, and another. And the reason being is that when I click on this, the first thing that it does is it runs the page load. Okay. And then we're going to step through that, and then it's going to run the button click. So it runs page load and button click. So how do I stop this from happening? Because a lot of times in your page.load, we'll load lists, like say we'll load, here we'll load the employee list, and then we'll load the facility list, just for fun. And then each time we go through, each one of these functions will run through, which takes computational time. And if the values are already there, we don't need to load them again because it didn't change. So why run that a second time? Why blow away a list just to reload the same list? It's stupid, it's redundant, and it's not needed. So the way to get around this happening is to use very, very easy, simple, if not, because this is Visual Basic, is callback or is postback, or or not, yeah. If not is callback, or not, yeah, or is postback. So then, and now we're going to take this text right here, and we're actually going to wrap this inside of that if statement. So we're saying if not is postback or not is callback, don't run it. So what we're going to do is now we're going to actually run it. And we're going to see that we have our basic text of A, and it runs. So sorry, I meant to put a not in here. Yeah. I thought not. Yeah. If not is callback and not is postback, then do this. So let's run it. And we'll show you this one. Okay, so A's there. We got our text. And as many times as we click it, it should not be running the damn thing. Alright, this is okay. Alright, well, either way, it's late in the day. I've been doing this all day. I'm not sure exactly why this is doing the stupidness. Oh, and duh. Wow, I'm slow. And this is very, very basic problems that you're going to run into. And the and or are very, very, very easy to miss. So we're saying if it's not callback or it's not postback, which it's true because it's not either of those. It's not called. It is callback, but or not is postback, and callback is not postback. So then we'll run it. So if you say if it is not is callback, if it's not a callback, and it's not a postback, and it's not is postback, then run this. So that means this line right here means that we'll only run this on the unique very first call, not if we call back or not if we push back. So let's run it again, remembering to change the or to an and, which is where as I said, I've been doing this all day and my brain's a little bit fried today because I program for work. So now you see we can click on it as many times as we want. That A is not building. I mean, we could change this to something else, and that A is not building because we're not actually going to run this code except for the first time around. So let's actually do this. When we click on enter, we do a unique call, a genuine call. So when I hit enter, it's going to ask me how do I want to run this one. Really? What are you doing? All right, we'll actually comment this off right here. So not comment this off, but we'll debug it. We'll trap it. So let's run it. The first time we'll actually stop at that. So right there, here's our stop. We run through and we don't run the click because there is no click. Now we're gonna actually click and we're gonna submit a post back, and now we'll actually step through the post back, and it skipped right over it because is post back is true. So if not is callback. So not, that's true, and not is post back, that's false. So we're gonna skip over it. So now we're actually going to run. We're gonna run the text box click. So if we only want to run stuff the first time we come into our program, such as this is where we would actually take this out of here. Let's stop that. We'd actually move this up into here because this is where we'd want to load the employee list the first time, the first unique time. And then the second unique time, then the first unique time we load the facility list. In the event that those can change, generally what I like to do is I'll handle those changes not inside the main function, but I'll handle those changes as they change. So if I have a sub down here, a sub called change employee, what I'll do is then down here I'll do all my stuff, and then at the bottom I'll do the change. I'll do the load employee list, and I'll do it down at the bottom here. So I'll load it the first time we come through, and then I'll load it every time we change the employee. Same with the facility. I'll load the facility the first time, and then I won't load it for every post back. Otherwise, every time you change a text box, every time you submit something, every time you change a drop down, you fire an auto post back, then you load the list every single time, when you only need to load the list if something changes. So generally doing it once here and then actually doing it when it changes is the best way to do it on the server side, because you're minimizing the computational time on the server. And also you got to remember that this is a very common thing, is that just because you're one person on this website doesn't mean that there's not 400 more that are doing the same thing as you are. And if there are 400 more people calling back every single time somebody does something on the site, you're going to add a lot of work to your server. You're going to add a lot of stress to your server. And over time, it'll wear down. And the more clients, more users you get using it, the slower it gets. So being careful and cautious of what you do in your page load is very important to your load times in the future, and as your user base grows. So be careful of this right here, and make sure that you handle correctly all your button clicks. It's very easy to forget about try catches. Try catches is something that we're going to go over in the future, very, very near future. So just to recap, in this one right here, what we did was we altered the tag, we added a text box, we added a button, we added another label, and then we added another text box down here. And then we went over, input from here when you click on the submit button, going back to the server and actually loading. Sorry, going back to the server. Oh, Lord. No, it's because we stopped. All right. And we went over going back to the server and handling the text change on the server. And then we also went over handling postbacks and callbacks, in the basic code. So if there's any comments, questions, please post them in the comments below. If you like this video, like it. Woo! Like and subscribe. We always want subscribers. We like likes. Also watch the advertisements at the beginning and the end of the videos. That helps us out with being able to fund doing these things. Yay! And in the next video, I plan on going over more styling and some more work on the server side. But the next video, I think we're going to do styling and using tables.